Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. I also live stream all of my builds and repairs for transparency and for educational purposes. So if you would like an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it get put together live, send me a message today. So tonight we're going to be building Matt's PC. So got another awesome Ryzen 3600 and RTX 3070 build here. So let's get right into it and let's go over the specs here. So as I just said, our CPU is the Ryzen 3600 CPU, which is a 6-core 12-thread CPU. It's probably the most popular AMD CPU that you can get. Everyone loves the 3600. It's a good value proposition. And yeah, people just love this chip. I sell more 3600s than any other kind of Ryzen CPU, to give you an example. So in addition to that, we're pairing it with the Aorus X570 Elite. This has onboard Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so it's a good value motherboard. And we're going to take a bit more of a closer look at the motherboard as always when we unbox it. So we've got 16 gigabytes of this silicon power RAM here. So this is actually 3600 megahertz and it's CAS latency 18. So relatively low latency, high speed memory there. So really good to pair with our Ryzen CPUs. Ryzen really loves fast memory. So don't ever skimp on the memory with your Ryzen CPU if you've got it in your budget. So for our graphics card here, we've got the Asus Dual RTX 3070. So this is a decent RTX 3070 card. It's not the top of the range, but it's not the cheapest card that you can get. So it's a little bit in the middle there. So basically, it's got a little bit of RGB on it. It's got 2 fans. It's got a total of 5 display outputs. So I think it's got 3 DisplayPort and 2 HDMI 2.1s. So, you know, decent connectivity. I think it actually supports 5 displays. I don't know why anyone would want to run 5 displays, but I think the card supports it. So that's one thing. But we'll put the graphics card down here to the side because it's like the last component that we install in our build. So we'll put it to the side there for now. So for our SSD, we've got a Crucial P1 1TB. So this is a good value SSD, and with a bit of smart software from Micron, it can run really fast, at least on smaller chunks of data. So that's thanks to their Momentum Cache feature, which comes with the software with this SSD. So in addition to that, we've got our power supply here. So we've got Gigabyte P850 Gold. So this is an 850 watt power supply and it puts out 849.6 watts on the 12 volt rail there. So really good. You're actually getting the 850 watts that it says on the box. It's not some value slightly less than that. It's putting out 70.8 amps for that 849 watts there. So if you're a power supply nerd, you can put that together. It's a decent power supply and it meets 80+ gold efficiency standards. So we'll put that to the side as well, and we'll get started and we'll have a look at this motherboard a little bit more closely. So this is, as I said, this is the X570 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi. So the X570 chipset is AMD's top chipset. So this board supports all sorts of overclocking features and has all of the latest tech in it, considering it's AMD's sort of premium chipset for their consumer boards. Don't get that confused with the Threadripper boards. So our motherboard here, I'm just going to to the side. What have we got in here? So, got some SATA cables, got a couple of M2 screws and offsets, got a Wi-Fi antenna. We've got one of these great front panel connectors. I love these things. We've got an Aorus Go Faster sticker, and that's about it. Our motherboard and whatever instructions, don't really need them. What's that?
I said crap, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people might need them, so. But we'll put these accessories here to the side. Matt can let me know if he wants me to install the SATA cables, even though we don't have any SATA devices to hook up here. Oh, we might actually need, some SATA power for some things, but I don't think we need these SATA data cables for anything, because we don't have any 2.5-inch SSDs or 3.5-inch hard drives. So let's have a closer look at this motherboard. See what we're getting here.
It's a nice looking motherboard.
Alrighty, so hang on, I'm just going to adjust my chair here.
Travis says, love the shirt.
Ah, you noticed the shirt, eh? Big Kahuna Burger. Yes.
That's tasty.
Yes. I love the I love that movie. It's probably one of my favourites. Alright, we'll get rid of some of this plastic here. And I haven't even had a really good look around this board myself, so we're going to go and have a look around this board and I'll point out some of the features as we go along. So starting at the top here, so we've got a fan header here, that's these 4 pins. You notice with our fan headers, they've always got this plastic guide to make sure that you don't reverse the polarity on them. So you got this power connector here. It's just an 8-pin CPU power connector for this board. So it's not a 16-pin or a 12-pin that you sometimes would find on an X570 board. That would be the more higher end ones, and that's to support more extreme overclocking. And over here we've got another 2 fan headers here. You'll see that one's grey and one's black. The grey one is marked as the CPU fan header. You generally have to have something plugged into that or your board won't boot. Coming around the side here, we've got these 2 headers here. We've got one with 4 pins and one that looks like it should have 4 pins, but it's missing one. So the one with 4 pins is a 12-volt RGB header. The one with missing 1 pin is called a 4-1 pin, and that is 5-volt RGB. So basically the 5-volt RGB is the new style, with the addressable lights that you can make rainbows and different patterns and stuff. The 12-volt is more like the standard power, like just the standard colors. It'll be, you know, either blue, red, green, whatever. But you can't get all the multicolor effects. That's only on the 5-volt header. So you don't want to hook up your 5-volt device to this 12-volt pins here. You don't want to accidentally bump it while it's on. You can do damage to the motherboard and to your fans from that. So you got to be very careful playing around with that RGB. So we've got dual channel memory here. So we've got 4 slots. So these 2 slots here is our first channel, and these 2 slots here are our second channel. That's why when we've only got 2 RAM sticks, we always plug it into that one and that one. So they're in 2 different channels. So that way the CPU can communicate with both RAM sticks or DIMMs at the same time. Because they're not actually called RAM sticks, they're called DIMMs or dual inline memory modules. That's why they're broken up into 2 sections there. It's actually 2 modules on the same stick. Coming down here, we've got a USB 3 front panel USB-C, I should say, front panel connection. It is USB 3, but that's the Type C panel connector there. We've got 6 SATA ports down there. We've got our front panel connectors. We've got 2 USB 3 ports there, so that's good. It's good to have that extra connectivity there. These USB 3 pins are probably the most delicate on the motherboard, so be very careful when you plug your USB 3 cable in. Make sure it's not on some funny angle. You can actually break those pins off. It's relatively easy to do. It's also relatively easy to bend the pins, and it can be difficult without the right tools to repair it. Yeah, Christine's done it, but it's okay because we can just fix that. But if you bend it, you might not have the right tools to get that little tiny pin back in place properly.
So, Travis says he watched it about a week ago. Pulp Fiction.
Ah, Pulp Fiction, yeah, definitely. I need to watch it again. I just don't have any time. So we've got 2 USB 2s down here. We've got our trusted platform module here. So that's like a security system that can store basically, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a little chip that you put in that has a security code that cannot be accessed with software. So it can help you keep various things secured by having a separate code that can be checked. So it's not really something that too many consumers will use, but they usually include it on the motherboard there just in case someone has a computer in a sort of high security type fashion and they need to use that. Maybe for work purposes, their organization might require that sort of stuff. So that's why you'll see that on a lot of motherboards. Generally, it's just, you don't have to worry about it. It's not in use for you. For standard, normal home users, it's not something that you have to worry about. Got two more RGB headers down here. We've got a two pin LED demo port there. That's for other things. Sometimes you'll have a graphics card that'll have like 2 pins of power that'll plug in, and that's for that. It's a little bit obscure. You won't see that on every motherboard. And down here is our front panel audio. And if you've watched my streams before, you know that I always talk about how this part of the motherboard down here, this bit here is all dedicated to sound. It's basically like having a sound card baked onto the board. We don't actually have sound cards anymore. We pretty much just have it all baked onto the board. These little gold capacitors you can see here are the audio capacitors, and you can get motherboards that have better and better audio systems and stuff. This has got a relatively decent audio system. I would say this is probably a similar sort of quality that you would find in most kind of standard home hi-fi systems and stuff like that. So if we have a look around here with all of our PCIe slots, we've got two X1s. This one here is X16 length, but it's only connected to X4. So I can actually see how long it's connected from this angle here. You can see the little connections there. This top one here that's silver, this is an X16 PCIe slot that is X16 connected. This is the one that we plug our graphics card into. So even though our graphics card would fit in this one, we have to use this one because this is the only slot on the board that's connected all the way along. So we want to make sure our graphics card is running at proper speeds. So it's very important that you don't put it in the wrong slot there. Most people don't make that mistake, but it does happen sometimes. And then we've got two M.2 slots here. These will likely, I don't see anything on the board to indicate that either of them runs slower. So we can assume that both of these are actually PCIe X4 M2 slots, because these M2 slots and these PCIe slots are actually the same thing. They run through the same system. It's just the configuration of the pins of the connection that's different. So a bit of a fun fact about them.
I just learned about that myself actually, just recently.
Oh really? Yeah, okay. And then around the back here we'll have a look at our I/O. So we've got 4 USB 2.0s. We've got our Wi-Fi obviously. We've got a single HDMI output, and we've got 6 USB 3s and 3.1s. We've also got, what's that?
All the audio and stuff down the bottom there's like got black around the edges.
Yeah, all the audio there's got black. So we've got the Sony Philips digital output there. So that's for your optical out, and you've got all your surround sound outputs there, so you can hook up 5.1 channel surround sound and all that. It does not have a CMOS button. No, so let's have a look. Where is our clear CMOS header? Our clear CMOS header is down here, just above the front panel connections. So nice convenient spot there for our clear CMOS. But yeah, that pretty much covers the motherboard off in a bit of detail. There's also one more 12 volt RGB header and a fan header around the side here. I didn't quite get to that. So, let's get started. So we'll get started with this RAM. I think I am missing.
It is
live. We were talking about a movie. Tim's wearing a shirt that says Big Cougar.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, I don't think you'd really get the reference.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction is a cult classic, a Quentin Tarantino movie, and basically it's about gangsters and stuff in LA. There's some pretty epic scenes, and if you haven't seen the movie, there's probably some quotes and references and stuff like that. Yeah, basically Samuel L. Neal, or Samuel L. Jackson rather. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah. But you get his name right, Tim. Yeah, he does the whole motherfucker thing. That's where he's famous from. You might have seen like a meme of him where looking pretty sweaty with a bit of an afro going on in like a black suit. That's from the movie Pulp Fiction. You see that meme around all the time. That's what it's from. If you haven't seen the movie, definitely look it up. It's got cocaine, it's got gangsters, it's got rape. It's got Bruce Willis in it. It's got a lot of things going for it. Who's that?
Rob says, "Hey guys, hey Rob."
Hey Rob, how you going? Good to have you with us. Babe, have you seen a pair of scissors? Because I need scissors for this RAM.
Yes, I have. Da-da-da-da.
Excellent. Who are they trying to keep out of this? Like, seriously?
People trying to steal them.
Yeah, but who has this? What kind of retailer has this sort of stuff on the shelf?
No one.
Yeah. Not in Australia, anyway.
Yeah, no.
No, we're not trusted with things like that. This is all high security items. So here we go with our memory here. So like I said, these are dual inline memory modules, and that's why you have the little separator in the middle of them. It's actually two modules on the same stick. And so these are called DIMMs, and we used to have what's called SIMMs, or single inline memory modules.
Rob says, "Hey Tim, update on my Aurora's Master B550 board. Gigabyte have replaced the battery and sending it back."
Ah, good. That's very good. So it was just a battery issue then. That's good. Nothing too major. What's that? Someone's asking for a price on a good gaming build. Send me a message and I'll get you a price once the live stream's over. Alrighty, so we've got our memory installed. We'll install our M2 SSD now. Hang on, there's one thing that we didn't talk about. This. Our Thermaltake TH240. So we're going to be installing this bad boy as our cooler, because obviously with our Ryzen 3600, they get pretty toasty with the stock cooler on. They go much better with a better cooling solution applied to them. So it's a little bit sad that they weren't shipping the 3600 with their Wraith Prism cooler, which is. It's just an air cooler, but it's a decent performance air cooler that they ship with some of their better SKUs. So, you know, it would have been a real win if they included it with that. But anyway, it's just got the standard Wraith Stealth cooler.
Tony says, "What rock are you living under if you haven't seen the movie Pulp Fiction?"
Oh, I know.
And
Yeah, you haven't lived. If you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, you haven't lived.
Josh says, "Is this a similar build we were talking about?"
Probably. What build were we talking about?
Tim gets a lot of people.
I talk about this so much with so many people, it all kind of blurs together.
He gets about 15 messages or so a day from
Oh,
all sorts of people.
At least. At least. That's like, yeah, that's like a, oh, it's relatively average, I guess. I guess I get some bigger days.
He's getting really busy at the moment, I think.
Just get the right drill bit for this. Yeah. So with our M2 drives, we use little tiny screws. So you need a really fine screwdriver for it. So as you can see, you've got these little heat sinks. It's got this heat spreader. So you remove this bit of plastic here. So just leave that up there. It's got what's called a thermal pad on it, which you can think of as kind of like thermal paste, but in a solid form. And it's just designed to spread the heat out from the M2 drives because they get quite hot when they're in intense operation. And so we had a little offset here. Put this down. So with a heat spreader over the top, you technically don't need to put these offsets down, but I'm just going to install them just because they came with the board. Actually, because, oh no, they've already pre-installed one there. No, I'll just use it here. You got a second M2 slot, but it's got a pre-installed bolt there. I was going to say I should use it for the second one, but that's okay. Alrighty. Okay, so we've got our memory installed, we've got our M2 drive installed, and I'm a naughty boy. I haven't put my anti-static strap on. I was playing Russian roulette then. Not that there's any risk to my customer, it's just a risk to me if I was to damage something by an electrostatic discharge while I was working on this, then I would be liable to replace the part at my expense. So we always put my anti-static strap on, and I connect it to a computer here I've got on the ground, which is I connect it to the power supply. Just clip it onto the back of the power supply. If the power supply is plugged in to the power, it doesn't have to be turned on, but it's got a ground cable. So when I connect myself to the back of that power supply, I'm actually grounded through the wall socket in this room. So I'm actually grounded quite safely outside. So even though I'm working in a carpeted room where there could be a bit of a risk of electrostatic discharge, the fact that I'm grounded with this cable means that I don't really have to worry about that kind of risk while I'm working on electronic components here. So we're going to turn our attention now to the CPU. So AMD CPUs are a bit more delicate than Intel CPUs, and the reason is that Intel CPUs they have what's called pads on the bottom. They don't actually have pins on the bottom of the CPU, whereas Ryzen have actual pins on the bottom of the CPU. So we've got to be very careful not to damage any of these little fine pins. And it's always a good idea when you install your Ryzen CPUs to have a quick look and just make sure all those pins are in line before you go to start putting it in the socket. And so, show you here, AMD sockets, they're all protected. So we just pull this bar up and that will open the socket. Now there's a little golden triangle in one of the corners of your Ryzen or AMD CPU, and you'll notice that there is a little triangle in one of the corners there. Every side has like a kind of a big triangle, but there's one that has like a little triangle within the triangle. That's the side that you want. And so you just line up those two. And it will just drop in place. Like obviously I sort of slid it in on the side because of the angle that I'm doing this on. But if you've just got it sitting down on top of the motherboard box like what I'm doing here, it'll just drop into place. And once it drops in place, just pull this bar down. Very little resistance on that. It's not like installing an Intel CPU where there's quite a bit of resistance there on that bar to hook it down. An AMD CPU, just pulling that bar down, it's quite effortless to get it down. Alrighty, so we don't need our stock cooler here for AMD. I see people trying to sell these for like $20 on Marketplace. I got a big box full of them. Like seriously, they're not really worth anything. Yeah, take your listings down. No one wants those.
No one wants your crap.
Yeah. Alrighty, so we've got most of our board prep, so we're going to turn our attention now to the cooler. And we're going to get this cooler mounted on this board because it's going to be a relatively easy install in our case here. So we're just going to be top mounting this radiator up here. And so we've got massive 2 times 200 millimeter RGB fans on the front here. So
Rob says, oh, those NASA blue dims again.
Yes, yeah,
they're
NASA.
Really pretty.
They look really nice. Really good value, 3600 C18 memory. So
my dad has a car the same shade of blue.
yeah, it pretty much is, eh? The MG. He doesn't do anything with it though.
No, it's a collector's car. That there's always something wrong. Then he fixes one thing, and then something else is broken. Like, at least he fixes
Alrighty. We got our cooler here. And so on the bottom of our coolers, we've got this plastic barrier here. So you want to remove this barrier, okay? Recently I had a PC come through here and whoever built it did not remove this plastic, and the customer was getting their CPU go up to 100 degrees just while gaming. They weren't even doing anything too intensive.
I don't get why. I still don't understand why they didn't peel it off. There's always like at least a little bit of marking on the plastic saying remove before installation.
Yeah.
Like.
And yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do to get started with this Thermaltake cooler, so this is the Thermaltake TH240 if you're interested and you have the same cooler. If you want to install for AMD, you need to slide this plate off. So that will just slide off like that, and we need to put in the AMX bracket. And so that'll just come out of the bag, and then that will just slide on like that. So now we've prepped it for AM4. We've got some other stuff here in this bag. We'll just put that to the side for now because we need to get these fans together. Alrighty, so this is essentially going to be our configuration like this. So just try and leave that like that. Want to make sure that these cables are going to be going to the back.
Right way.
You know, fans can be a bit like condoms, eh? You know, you put them on the wrong way for a bit, then you put them on the right way. Change back to my regular screw bit. And yeah, these will be in an exhaust position. That bolt doesn't seem to like that. Particular size of bolt does not seem to like that, even though it's a bolt for a radiator. And what? I've got another one that doesn't like it. You have no idea how many of these spare bolts that I have, so I'm trying to actually use some of them. This will fit.
Josh says this would be a pretty good setup for Call of Duty, wouldn't it? That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Definitely, man.
Yeah, dude. Like this is pretty much the best kind of setup for gaming in 2021. You can't really beat the kind of price to performance that you're getting here.
What's the approximate price? Like 1,500, 200?
See, I can't. That's the thing. I can't even remember. Okay.
Remember what the parts cost? You good at that?
Yeah, I'm better at remembering the parts. So, I can actually name the price of all the parts. So,
Do that.
the X570 Elite Wi-Fi motherboard there, that is $329. The Thermaltake TH240 is $150. The RAM that we used here, this is $170. The CPU that we used here is $330. The SSD that we've used here is $150. What else have we got? The case is $150. The power supply is $190. What else have we got in this build that we haven't mentioned? The power supply, Android, the graphics card. So the graphics card is the Asus Dual, which is $1,150. Then what else have we got? I feel like we're missing something. No, I think that's everything.
Josh says, I still have the price. Haha, it's the exact same build. I just had a look.
There we go. Yeah. I might have even shown you this because I just finished up and I was like sending an invoice off for it, and I was like, you're asking me for like a pretty similar system, and I might have just shown you the exact same parts list, so you can actually have a look and see exactly what you were quoted on here. So, but this is an awesome build, man. Like I'd be happy with this.
140 mil fans on the front.
No, two 200s.
Ah, 200.
Yeah, they're big 200s there.
Chunky.
Yeah. Not too many cases support 200mm
No.
fans. There we go. Got our fans installed. So now we've got our fans installed, got our right bracket on the cooler. We now need to focus our attention to all this other stuff around in this bag. So this is where people's eyes start to glaze over, because we start getting into brackets and bolts and offsets and all the fun stuff. So, you know, these are the sort of things. It's like, yeah, okay, building a PC isn't too hard, but it can be very, very time consuming if you haven't done this kind of stuff before. So you're not familiar with what parts that you need, etc. So we're going to remove this standard bracket.
So how come now everyone is going to AMD over Intel? I don't know anything on PC, just want to upgrade from console.
Hey, yeah, so the reason why people are going with AMD right now is that Intel have had some issues, like some systemic issues over the last couple of years with bringing out their next generation of chips. And what it's meant is that AMD have made some big leaps and bounds in those years. And so now they got to the point where, you know, they've actually been beating Intel on the multi-threaded performance side of things for quite a while. And with their latest generation of CPUs, they've actually taken the gaming crown off Intel. So they're beating Intel at single-threaded workloads as well. So there's been a bit of a shift. It's mainly, so Intel had a record calendar year in 2020 in terms of sales. So that's largely driven because the consumer market's only about 20% of the total market for PCs globally. So a big part of the market is actually the all of the offices and stuff, and they all buy Intel. It's been like that for years. That's what they buy. Ryzen and AMD, they've made big inroads in the consumer market to the point where I get people coming to me all the time who are like, hey, can I get a price on, and I need a budget AMD system that does this and does that. And I'm just like, oh, whoa. Budget AMD system? It's 2021.
Yeah, you're not going to get a budget.
They're all
like
sold out. All
old.
the CPUs are sold out. So you've got the supply and demand equation going on, and then you've got the fact that they are starting to beat Intel. So people are choosing AMD because they might get a 3600, but they have the intention of upgrading that CPU to one of the new Ryzen 5000 series down the track. So they want that upgradability for the future. So people are going with this for that reason. But like that said, there's even with Intel dropping the ball in terms of their research and development into their next gen stuff over the last few years, it's taken that amount of time for AMD to sort of catch up to where Intel is. So it's not like if you are upgrading a PC after ages, like more than 5-6 years, it's not like you're going to notice any serious difference between Intel or AMD unless you had certain types of workloads. If you're a gamer, you're not going to notice any difference. If you get a new Intel or new AMD system, you're going to be like, man, this is the best computer I've ever had. Either way, that'll be your thoughts on how it runs and stuff. So I can pretty much guarantee that. The only time you'd notice a difference is if your workload was about video editing and stuff, and that's where AMD is a lot stronger for the dollar than Intel.
Tony says I was actually just going online to search pricing for this setup, which has saved me time. Thanks.
There we go. Save someone a bit of time. So with our back plate here, it'll say AMD on one side and it'll say Intel on the other side. So they've got this bit of sticky. It's got a center bit, just pop that out.
What?
Christine's like, what? Yep, so we remove this bit of sticky. And what this does, this sits
The answers.
over these metal parts, just like that. Because we want to, when we mount our board, we don't want any metal contacting the back of the board here. It's very important that we don't have any metal contacting the back of the board. So now we've got that in place there. We now have to look at our bolts. So we've got these bolts that are going to go through, but we've also got these little washers. So we need to make sure these washers are installed on all 4 of these bolts, because like I said, no metal can contact the back of this board. These boards, these are what are called PCBs, printed circuit boards. They have electrical circuits all across them, especially on the back of the board. The back of the board is a lot more things that can short out on the back of the board compared to the front of the board. The engineers are smart like that. They make it more robust on the front side of the board where you're going to be touching things, and they make it a bit more exposed on the back here. So very, very important that we don't actually make any contact with our cooler and our motherboard here. So this is one of these critical things that you got to get right. So just make sure I use the right hole here, because on this bracket there are two different holes that I can stick the screws through for Intel and AMD. There's actually 3 different holes for the Intel one.
Is the inside like Intel and the outside ones AMD? Or am I wrong?
No, the inside ones here are AMD,
Oh.
and the outside ones are Intel. So the way you can think of it is the AMD holes are more rectangular, the Intel holes are more square. So if you think AMD rectangle, Intel square, you'll always make sense of this weird looking bracket that you'll see. And you'll see a bracket like this with many different types of coolers as well, I should mention. So what you're seeing me do here applies to more than just Thermaltake TH240. I can't give you an exact list of all the coolers that are like this and all that. I honestly don't know. I take coolers as I install them. Sometimes I come across a random one that I haven't done before, and I'm like, oh yeah, this goes together a little bit differently. But once you've done a few of them, you kind of get how they go together, and it's not that big a deal to... You don't even need the instructions. Like, it'll just be like, you just have to sit there and look at the parts for a bit and be like, oh yeah, I know what that'll be for. That'll go together like that. Oh yeah, that's for AM4. That's for LGA 1200. Blah 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 blah, and it'll all just come together for you. But yeah, that can be the hardest part of putting together a PC like this, is just getting all this sort of stuff done. Alrighty, so we've got our back plate prepped here, so we can turn our board back over. So I like to pick the board up by this heat shielding here if I don't have cooler on it. So you just put the plate down like this. And that will just fit over nicely like that. So just around where the screws go in, if you look at it closely, you'll see these like little circle bits around it. It is actually insulated around there, but I still wouldn't want to have metal touching the board there. So we'll just put our offsets on. So these offsets are sort of there to help stop anything shorting out, but also to stop you from over tightening. Yeah, they're just bits of plastic, and they're basically there to stop you from over tightening more than anything. But they are there slightly to stop anything from making contact with them and shorting something out. So there we go. So we've got our back plate installed. So we've got these 4 screws, we've got our CPU there, we've got our cooler here ready to mount. So basically now we're just left with these 4 bolts and the cooler there. Sorry, there's another bolt there. So let's just stick her on and let's get going. No, let's put some thermal paste down first. Oh, bloody cat. Anyway, so we're using a bit of Arctic silver here. So this is decent performance thermal paste. You can get some higher grade stuff. There we go. We can put a little bit on the bottom of our cooler just to make sure we're right.
Yeah.
Oh, alrighty. So now we can put our cooler block down. Now I recommend putting it down and just kind of spreading it out a bit. Lifting it up and just making sure that you're getting good contact on that thermal paste. Alright. So just doing this will save you a bit of headaches with going, oh shit, if I got enough thermal paste on it, I better pull it off and have a look. Alright, that's feeling pretty good there. It's pressed down nicely, it should just sort of hold in place. Thermal paste is quite sticky. Oh, say it's quite sticky and then it just pops out. But once you get a couple of corners in, it's all relatively easy.
Josh says, oh no, my motherboard was the Gigabyte B450M Aurora Elite. What's the difference in the one you were doing and the 450?
Okay, it's the difference between the B450 chipset and the X570 chipset. So basically, you've got a chipset that supports the new PCIe Gen 4 system. So B450 doesn't have PCIe Gen 4, B550 does, X570 also does. So you've got that. You've also got a platform. B450 supports overclocking as well. With X570, you've got some boards with some extra options there as well. In addition to the PCIe Gen 4, you can get X570 boards with 12 and 16 pin CPU powers there, so you could support higher overclocking. And yeah, essentially you'll just find a board that has a lot more features built into it with that X570 chipset. It's the same as the Z490 chipset for Intel, or the Z370 or Z390. They're also their top boards, and with Intel it's only overclocking is only fully supported on their top boards. So with AMD, at least you can still get pretty much full overclocking capability on the B450 chipset as well.
Patrick says, how come you use so much thermal paste? They say to use a P-size drop on other channels.
Yeah, so with an AMD CPU there, you want to make sure that you have a good coverage across all of the CPU. You should just have
more than what it really is, because
yeah,
it's been spread out.
What I put there is roughly a pea size. It's just spread out essentially. What I do is I spread it out. I don't just put a pea-sized blob in the middle. That leaves you with a circle shape on your CPU, and then the edges aren't actually covered in thermal compound. AMD CPUs are relatively square, and so are Intel ones, so I try to make sure that the lid is covered, especially when we're mounting with a block that is going to cover the entire lid of the CPU. Because what the idea with thermal paste is, what looks like a smooth surface to us on the macro scale is actually quite rugged under a microscope. So we don't actually see all the ridges and valleys that are actually on what looks like a seemingly smooth bit of copper. But they're actually there, and the thermal grease is just designed to fill in those cracks and increase the amount of thermal conductivity between the block of the cooler and the lid of the CPU. So that is what we're fundamentally trying to do. So yes, it's a pea-sized blob. They're not getting that fact wrong, but it needs to be applied evenly and spread equally across the CPU lid. So in general, that's kind of the best practice. Some people like wipe it over with like a bit of plastic or whatever. I just have the tube of thermal paste. I have it on a pretty much a like a 90-degree angle straight down, and then I just tilt it slightly to let a tiny amount of thermal paste across. So I'm actually spreading these really thin lines across the CPU. I'm not putting big chunky lines of thermal paste down. They're actually quite thin that I'm putting down. It's literally, what I've got there is just enough to cover the lid of the CPU in a nice consistent layer that's not spread out. Sorry, not thinned out too much.
Josh says, so the 450 still isn't too bad then, just not as much add-on sort of thing.
B450's fine. The thing that you don't have there is PCIe Gen 4, but I don't think that's a really big deal for most people, because with PCIe Gen 4, it's only the newest graphics cards that support it, and even the newest graphics cards, if they run at Gen 3 speeds, they're not exactly bottlenecked. So still got quite a bit of bandwidth in that Gen 3 PCIe connection. They've got Gen 4 there because it's sort of future ready, but at the moment, other than M.2 drives and SSD and NVMe PCIe SSDs, not really, graphics cards can't really make too much use of it. So unless you want to run the fastest possible SSD in your computer, you don't really need Gen 4. But that's the new standard. It's going to be on all new Intel boards pretty soon. So yeah, you can expect to see a bit more of that, and you can expect to see graphics cards improve and eventually make use of that PCIe Gen 4 bus, as it's called. So we'll turn our attention now to the case, because we've got our board prepped and everything ready to go. Get this plastic off. I'll just store this down here. So this is a really nice case. It's got really good airflow. Never any issue with it. And one thing that's good is at $150 with the twin 200mm fans there, it's quite a good buy as long as you don't mind the big fan look. You can actually fit a 140 as the exhaust there on the back, which is another feature that I really like. 140s move quite a lot more air than a 120. A 140 is actually kind of more like a it's kind of weird if you were to make it so that you only increased one side of it, it would be a 160. So if it was just as wide as a 120, it would be a 160. And I know that's actually a mathematically impossible circle there, but it just gives you an idea, because when it's 140, it's actually it's not just the length that's changing, it's the width. So it's actually bigger than if you look at it just go, oh, 120, 140, they're just a little bit different. Actually, it's quite a big step up there from 120 to 140. And the good thing about 140s is when you run them on silent, they still move a decent amount of air and they're practically silent, whereas 120s make a bit more noise to move the air. So 120s are good, and 200s are really good for it as well. But some people it's weird, some people just don't like the look of the 200s. I quite like them. I would have had 200s in my case if I could have fit 3 200s at the front, but mine fits 3 140s at the front, which just fits perfectly, so I've gone with 3 140s. And so we've got a Thermaltake RGB controller at the back here as well, which is good to see. It's nice when there's an included controller, because that can be just one other expense with these computers is getting the controller right, especially if you don't have the right RGB ports on your computer. Alright, let's get those cables free. So we've got our power supply here, so it's our Gigabyte 850. This is a modular power supply. So with modular power supplies, they come just like this. There's no cables. You plug the cables into them. Some bolts. Anti-static foam. Okay, so our cables are all in here. So the advantage with modular power supplies is you can just plug in the cables that you want, and then you can just like stash these ones away and then only plug them in if you need them. And then you don't have to have like a big mass of cables around. So we need this one. So RTX power for the motherboard, this big 24-pin connection. So this is a CPU power. We definitely need CPU power. So just make sure you plug the right end into the power supply. So with our CPU power, you can tell which one's the right end, because the one that plugs into the motherboard, it'll split in half if you try and pull one up and one down. One half up and one down. You'll see that they split apart. So that's the one that plugs into the motherboard. Over here, so this will be this is a PCIe, so we're going to need a couple of these 6+2 connectors for our graphics card. So for neatness sake, we will actually run 2 of these cables for that. Because we're going to have 2, I'm pretty sure we've got 2 8-pins on this. We just have a single. Photos of everything else, guys, or no, I think I see evidence of 2 8-pin connectors. That's alright, so we will install both cables here. So we don't need this one, this is another CPU.
It's a nice looking card. Kind of looks like yours, but a little bit shorter.
It does not look like mine.
Kind of. Kind of.
I'm a ROG Strix OC snob.
You're like,
Okay, so we'll plug some SATA power in. And so we got these spare cables here. So we're going to stash them away in our case, so Matt can use them if he requires them. So we'll install our power supply now. So how are they doing this with the power supply? Is that installed from around the front?
No.
Indeed it is. Yeah, it is. Hang on. Oh, it's okay. Alrighty. Oh, duh. Could have been slipped on the back. There's a back panel for it. before.
Just have to do things the hard way, don't you?
Oh, I know. Yep, I really like to do things the hard way.
No.
But yes, you will find cases that will have these brackets like this. So maybe check that.
Is that the future Tim?
No, well that's the fun. That's the fun with building PCs. Even if you've built in the case before, if you haven't built in it for a while, you're like, hang on, how does this one go together? Because there's some pretty weird configurations out there, as I'm sure you've seen already. Sweet. Alrighty, so let's stash those cables away and bring all these around. Sweet as. So now we can mount our motherboard. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check these offsets and make sure that they're in the right spot for our motherboard. In this case, because we've gone with a standard ATX motherboard, all of our offsets in this case are in the standard ATX position. So that makes it nice and easy for us to mount our board. So it's a little bit awkward when you have these radiators and stuff to put in as well, but if you can put it down somewhere in the case out of the way, then you can position the board into place very carefully without knocking any of the delicate stuff on the bottom of the board. Now Now once it's in place, that's the wrong size. Take your correct size bolt and screw it down. So standard ATX is going to have 9 bolts to tie down. If you have a micro ATX board, you'll probably have either 8 or 6 to tie down. So I find if I do those 3 in the middle first, it's a lot easier to do the rest. And you know what I'm not going to screw up tonight? The CPU power cable.
Sure about that.
I'm positive. The ironic thing is, on this board in this case, is I could just mount the cooler now and do it in the normal order, and I wouldn't run into a headache with it. There's plenty of room in this case.
Donald says, hey guys, how goes the build?
Hey Donald, how you going? Yeah, coming along, mate. Yeah, we're nearly there. We've just got our board to install, and then we're just going to be wiring up our cables, and we'll be ready to go. It's been a pretty uneventful build, but yeah, we've gone over everything. I was just having a look and seeing what sort of side mount graphics card cables this was compatible with. Doesn't have the one that I've got on hand. It's not compatible with that one.
Donald says, no plastic on the water block?
Ha! No, we got rid of that. Jesus. Plug the CPU power in now, so I don't do myself a mischief. Put this back fan in. No, I'm just getting this back fan cable in. Just kept it tied up, but I've just positioned it discreetly. Alrighty. Get all these routed out the back.
Oh, cheapers.
Australian cricket team for me. Alrighty. We got all these cables and we'll route these out the back. Don't want to see any of this crap. I'll lift it up. It's going to be a busy haul, this one.
Okay.
It's going to be a busy haul, this one.
Oh, shit.
It's kind of good to
Yeah.
route them all in the same spot. It makes it look a lot cleaner.
I.
Yeah, I know. It's not. Alright, so now the cover off. So where will we mount this? How far along do you reckon? What do you reckon?
Scoot it over. Yeah.
There?
Yeah. Explodes everywhere. Back up. What inside that box?
Once you get those first two bolts in, it's all good. And see, once you've tied the bolts in, you can actually sort of adjust the position of it really easily just by loosening all the bolts, and then it will just slide across. To a point, at least. There are roughly 2 centimeter iterations along there.
Just fixed all that.
Yeah, I know. Alrighty. It's got our cooler installed, got our board installed. So mainly now it's just about cabling. this is what we're working with, all this mess. Alright, that's front panel. That's SATA. All these are front panel. Except this goes to our RGB. Let's just leave them over there for now. One thing I don't like is how I don't have room for the CPU, the pump header. I don't have room. I can stash it discreetly. So we can stash discreetly behind the cooler. Yeah, so we can stash it discreetly behind the cooler, but there's no... So normally I'd run it out the back and there'd be another hole around here to stick it onto the CPU power, but I had to actually just run it behind where that radiator sits. But that's okay. We've got our front panel connectors. So we'll just start zip tying these up. So we want this to be nice and neat. Crappy zip ties. I think I need to use my own. So I buy ones that aren't crap. But these are free! Free! We all love free things, right? So yeah, cable management doesn't take 5 hours or some crap. Like it's a relatively easy job. Okay, so it looks like we've got. We'll get this little RGB cable back. We've got front panel audio. Got a spot for a front panel audio over there? No? Come on, thermal tape. You guys are killing me. Yeah, I know, but you guys are killing me. Granted, there's nothing really wrong with that, but it's still an extra cable, man. second slot here. I guess you can have those. Yep. Okay, so our front panels. So where's that thing I got excited about earlier? You want to show? Actually, no, I'll come around. Oh. Why won't that autofocus? So you can just stick all your front panels into this big one, then just plug the whole thing into the slot. It makes it so much easier. They just clip in place. Once they clip in, they won't unclip. There we go, we've also got room for our speaker as well. But we won't be installing the speaker, we don't usually install the little diagnostic speaker these days. There we go. So now you can see that just whole thing just clips in place there, nice and easily. Alrighty. Give these a quick zip tie. Alrighty, as you can see we're already starting to look a bit neater over here. We've got these components, we've got some fans, an RGB, and that's pretty much all she wrote. So we've got these fans in place. Okay, so where are our extra fan headers on this board? There no convenient secondary fan headers. So that means I'm going to use this cable here that Thermaltake have given us, and we're going to run both fans through the same header. So I've turned 2 fan cables into 1. There we go. Alrighty, so we've got some RGB cables to hook up now. So with these Thermaltake ones, we can just daisy chain them. Okay, alright. That can stay down there, and we'll just need this converts Thermaltake to regular RGB. So this takes it from these strange connections here to one of these 4-1 pin connectors here.
Spider web of cables.
Yeah, but you just gotta keep them organised. So you do the little ones first, then you strap the big ones down on top of them. And I'll try to run this from the top here, I think. Fucking white labels.
Tim's not impressed.
I hate these white labels. They're not paper, they're like plastic. You can't just rip them off. They're like stuck on there. It's just totally unnecessary. I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't even be messing around with these cables if you need that little bit of plastic thing telling you what it is. Maybe I'm just old school like that. So the good thing about these Thermaltake cables is they've got this like rubbery plastic stuff around the outside. So you can actually kind of stuff them up into the corners there. And that way you don't need cable ties and your cable management's still good. Alright, so we've got this SATA cable, that's going to stay around the back. And we've got some graphics card and motherboard cables. We'll plug in our motherboard. Just bend that around like that. Alright, sweet, that's pretty much in place. SATA power for our front fans and RGB. So all I've got left is the graphics card power cables. So everyone's favourite moment, the most expensive component in a gaming computer, or what should be the most expensive component in your gaming computer, the graphics card. Our RTX 3070. Oh, it was just like stuck in there. Alrighty. So it comes in this special packaging. So if you haven't seen this packaging before, at the bottom, that folds out. And releases the graphics card. And we do have two 8-pin power connectors. So I did spot that right. It was hard to spot. See, I would have thought that'd be a sell point for this graphics card. Show people that it takes two 8 pins. Ugh. Ugh. Horrible. You know, and some stickies just like comes off very uneloquently. Eloquently. Ugh. Tongue-tied. So here it is. So a bit of stuff there on the bottom, bit of anti-static foam. And more plastic. Got to keep the engraving on the bottom of that graphics card safe. Alrighty. So obviously in this case we can side mount this, but we do need a kit for it. So we need a riser cable and stuff to do that. So we won't be doing that today, but that is an option for Matt in the future. So for this graphics card, it does, if you can see, it takes up a little bit more room than the back plate. So it sort of takes up nearly 3 slots worth of room, but it only takes up 2 slots at the back. And in this configuration, that's not going to be a problem. But sometimes if you've got a Wi-Fi card or something that you wanted close to it, it could be a bit of a problem. Serious?
Serious.
Oh, I love these factory Titan bolts. They're always good fun. Yo.
Reese says, could you send me how much this bill would be?
Yeah, sure, Reese. I think someone named it in the comments above, so you might be able to see
no,
it.
they didn't.
They didn't? No, no worries. Send me a message and I'll send it to you when I finish the build.
Are you in Queensland? Yes. We're in Brisbane.
We're in Brisbane, so you can pick up from us. We're over at Tingalpa, so just on the other side of the Gateway Bridge, depending what side of town you're on.
Reese says, nice. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, just send me a message. I'll forget if you don't.
Nice. He's on the Gold Coast.
Ah, sweet. Yep. Yeah, nice and easy.
Just next door.
Yep. So yeah, no need to go over the Gateway Bridge to get to me. No tolls. Yeah. All right. I'll slot that bad boy in there. Very good. Alrighty. So now we just have 2 more cables to install for our graphics card power. And so, it's going to be the best way to do this.
Through the side shroud.
Through the side shroud.
Yeah.
Over the top.
Sort of like on the side. Like on the corner, if you can, almost. Just above the corner.
It's not perfect, I'll tidy everything up and go over it.
directional, so.
There's a cat mama.
Very good. It's all looking pretty clean back here.
Nice.
So yeah, it's not perfect. I don't like to make it really tight and everything all like that, because if you ever have to move anything, you're gonna have like 50 zip ties to cut out and then a lot to put back. So I like to just try to secure my cables relatively neatly, and so that they're relatively easy to access if I ever have to move anything or change anything around. So while it's not absolute like picture perfect like Instagram level cable management, this is what I consider to be effective, reasonable cable management. It doesn't take long to implement, and it's very easy to make changes to, and it doesn't use an absolute shitload of zip ties.
Less plastic, better.
Yeah, exactly. Less resources we use, less plastic we use, the better. And see, the good thing about this is that we can now quite easily, if we didn't do cable management, we'd have this big mass of cables out here. Whereas with this kind of setup, I can quite easily put the panel on. Just a little bit of pressure there. Have I got it?
Yeah.
Look at that, perfect. And that's really what you want. You want to just be able to slide that back panel on without putting any pressure on it. Sometimes with heaps and heaps of cables and heaps of RGB and stuff like that, it just gets really tight. In some cases, don't quite have as much room there, and you will have to push down a little bit. You'll have a little sort of a bulge in the middle there. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but that's fine as well, as long as you're not jamming everything in there and stuff like that, because that's just, you know, representing a little bit of risk there. Alrighty. Well, we are all cabled up and ready to go. Alright, so I'm just going to unhook this computer. That up there. The monitor's got power. So I'm going to unhook my anti-static band now, because I'm done working on the internal components for now. So we had a Wi-Fi antenna over here as well. Oh, this has got inelegant plastic on it as well. Ugh. Ugh. Are you serious? Oh. Oh. Oh.
You're right.
It's getting worse.
Remind you of a candy cane wrapper?
Yeah. Hell yeah. Perfect metaphor. Oh. Oh, it's horrible. Hey, at least it's magnetic. Unlike the one that comes with the Asus Prime motherboards with Wi-Fi. Remember that one? Remember that one the other time that you were like, this is shit? Okay. We'll switch on our power supply. Moment of truth.
Yay!
That's what we like to see.
Those fans are so cool. They're so chunky.
All our RGB lit up. Yep.
All over my shoes.
There we go. So sometimes it takes a little while the first time you turn it on, because what it's doing is when you normally turn a computer on, if you've turned it on before, it's already got pre-saved information about the system configuration, because the CPU doesn't know what it's connected to. Basically, as soon as you turn it on, the CPU gets power. CPU sends out a command asking for all the components in the motherboard to basically identify themselves. So like all units report in, and so the memory, the RAM will report in, the graphics card will report in, the hard drives and any other devices connected will report in, the keyboard and mouse. And once it's done that, it'll be like, okay, yep, we're ready to boot. So we're going to turn it off, because we're going to go into our BIOS, and see, now that we've done a boot one time, it won't take us long to do it the second time. So it's coming up, it says clear CMOS information, and that's pretty normal for this because we're doing a new PC and it doesn't have any saved CMOS information. So in the BIOS there, we can see pretty clearly that we've got our two 8GB sticks of DDR4 memory. See if Christine can zoom in on that screen a bit better.
Cat sitting on my lap. It's really not helping. There we go.
Can you zoom in a bit more? Sorry. I think people should be able to see that pretty clear. So we need to enable our XMP. So it means the RAM's going to run at its rated speed. So 3600, timings of 18, 22, 22, 42. So that's what's called the memory timings. The main number that we worry about is that first one. And we're not doing any RAID configurations, we're not doing any overclocking configurations. So we're just going to save that as is. I'm going to grab my Windows 10 installation media. Plug that in. And now we can save and exit. Yes. So if you've created a Windows 10 installation media, you probably won't see that first screen that comes up on mine. It's just because I've got mine set up for 32 and 64-bit Windows 10, just in case I ever have to put Windows 10 onto an older PC that is still running 32-bit. Because I do recommend that for pretty much anyone who's still running an old computer. There are ways we can optimize Windows 10 for older machines. Custom install, yes. So it's important to never have any other drives hooked up when you first install Windows. Windows has a tendency to install the boot manager onto whatever's connected as drive 0. And if you've got a SATA or a SATA or hard drive connected to one of the SATA ports, that will show up as drive 0 in Windows. And so even though you're installing your operating system on the SSD, it's going to install Windows Boot Manager onto whatever is in the first SATA port. And so what that means is if you install it like that and then you remove that hard drive or SATA SSD from your computer, then your computer won't boot anymore because it doesn't have Windows Boot Manager. And while you can sometimes recover it, it's a bit of a pain, so not something I recommend. Turn the light up on the screen. Hey Nick, how you going? Just put together this sexy Ryzen 3600 and 3070 PC in the Thermaltake Commander C35 case. It's another Aorus motherboard, X570 board. No issues here though.
Nick says not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Nick. I'm fucking tired. I'm always tired. I'm just
Perpetually tired.
perpetually tired. I don't let it bother me. I just wake up. I'm like, oh, I'm tired again. Oh well, that's just my life.
I need a holiday.
I asked the doctor, I was like, can you get cancer from like being tired all the time? And they're like, no. But if you're tired all the time, you might have cancer. I was like, oh, okay. Thanks.
That's really reassuring. No, I don't think you.
So basically, no one ever died of cancer from being stressed or working too much or something like that. But if you are tired all the time and you're not working too much, then
Maybe
go to the doctors.
Go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Nick says, did you enjoy your few days off on the weekend?
Yeah, it was good, but see, I've been setting up a website and all this other
Yeah,
stuff,
that's
so
really close to being done. We've been doing a heap of photos and like other
yeah,
stuff
so
like that.
it's all coming along. So we're gonna have an official website, which is going to be cool. Obviously, we're on YouTube now, so we've got our YouTube channel set up.
Hello to the YouTubers watching.
Yeah, if there's anyone on YouTube, I mean, I've got a pretty small following on YouTube because we only just launched it, so it's not like there's too many people following us there. But I'm hoping I want to upload heaps of like little how-to videos and stuff like that on YouTube. So I'm hoping watch this space.
Let us know what you guys want to know.
Yeah,
Like,
if you want
what
to.
you guys want to see.
Yeah, whatever you want to see, I'm willing to make
What do you know?
I'm willing to make the content. Put it that way.
What do you want to know how to do? You know.
Yeah, because that's
install a
my that's my
CPU,
problem. Because
Cool.
in my mind everything's like really simple
I
and
don't
stuff
know.
like that. But I don't know what.
I'm a noob, so I don't know.
Yeah, but that's good. You're a noob, so you can give me heaps of questions, babe. You can give me heaps of topics to cover.
Why is there TI? No TI. I don't know.
Why is a TI no TI?
Is
That's
that
a
like
that's a
thousands?
marketing question, not a computer question.
Oh, I don't know.
No, so TI is it comes from Titan. So
Oh,
Titan used to be Nvidia's
Yeah.
like top
Yeah.
dog card,
Yeah.
and they were like, okay, so how can we like add some Titan bling to some of the other models to differentiate them as like a better version? So they added the TI.
So is that why that's on the ROG Strix one?
No, because everything I said there becomes they kind of broke their own. They're kind of breaking their own rules with.
Okay.
Because they're planning on releasing a 3060 normal, but it's got 4 extra gigabytes of VRAM. So I don't know how that
How
fits
is that
in.
better than like
It-
the
I-
TI is
that-
meant to be like
yeah,
the best
yeah,
one?
yeah. I
Like,
know.
I've got a what's
I don't make these.
980 Ti.
I don't make these decisions. Yeah, I don't make these decisions though. They do this, and all I do is I just get the information and then I just talk about it. That's all I can do from my position. I can just tell you what they're doing, what the products are, what the status quo is with TI and shit like that. Whether they want to do whatever with it. That's why I said this is a marketing question, not a computer question.
Well, you're good at that too.
Yeah, I know. That's my background.
I've done 20 years of marketing and sales, so you know.
Yep. Alrighty, so we'll go get our Windows updates going on. And while we do that, I'm having a little bit of dramas with my trusty SATA to USB thing here. Nope, that's looking good. Yeah, I had so on my computer, on my motherboard, there is a USB voltage warning system, and so if something triggers that overvolt system, it instantly shuts the computer down. Just bang, turns off. So I plugged this SATA to USB drive into the back of my computer in the USB-C port, and my computer just switched off. Like I pressed the power button on the power supply. I was like, what? And then I turned it back on, it was like USB overvoltage failure warning or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Nice for you to be watching out for that, Gigabyte. Okay. So let's get some stuff going on. GeForce Experience.
Nick says, oh look, Nick is on YouTube as well.
What's that?
Nick is on YouTube as well.
Ah, look at that.
Hi.
Someone's watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
We had one random person watching the other night, and he was trying to like communicate in the comments, but because
Oh, we have two. There's two.
we were
people
watching, we were watching all the Facebook comments and
Yeah.
communicating with the Facebook
I
people.
really need to be better at watching you guys on YouTube as well as Facebook. I'm sorry. That's my bad. Yay! Nicholas has subscribed and liked the video.
It's very good. We need more, but like this is the thing, to grow the YouTube channel. I need to get more content going on.
Indeed.
Okay, let's get some stuff going on. That's Chrome. Crystal Disk Info is like a hardware and
I like the Japanese characters. It's so cute.
yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, Crystal Disk Info is like a hard drive and SSD diagnostic piece of software. It's like a scan tool for your hard drives, like a scan tool you'd find in a car, to tell you what error codes your engine's putting out and stuff. It'll do that for your hard drives. It'll tell you how much life your hard drives have left in them and whether you've got a failing drive. So it's a really handy app to have on your computer. And Crystal Disk Mark is a hard drive and SSD speed test app. All these apps that I'm installing here, if you bought a PC off me, you'll probably find a lot of these apps on your computer. The reason I leave them there is that they're generally handy to have if you have a problem, and they don't take up a great deal of space. So it's not like it's not like wasted space. I wouldn't really call it bloatware. These are handy things, because if you have some sort of a weird problem,
You can contact us.
I might
We
say to
can
you,
run
hey,
these apps
can
and stuff.
you go and run this app and tell me what your result is?
Mm.
Because that might tell me some really crucial information. So Afterburner.
We'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a lovely time.
Speaking of times, we'll adjust the date and time. Thank you. Here, Windows settings gets a bit flustered when you're doing your updates. Because even though we went into the date and time here, it's the same part, it's like the same app that's doing the Windows updates. So it can get a bit flustered. Okay. Steam's definitely a gaming computer, so we'll probably need Steam. I'd like to install Heaven Benchmark. I'd like to install VLC. VLC is just a really versatile media player, and it doesn't take up a great deal of space. and it has low RAM usage unless you have a really large playlist. Crucial Storage Executive. This is the SSD software that comes with your Crucial P1 SSD, and this has the momentum caching software to make your SSD run faster with like smaller file size transfers. What it does is it uses your RAM to speed up the SSD. Alright, so we'll get our gigabyte drivers. So we've got a RTX 570 Wi-Fi. Go to the site, go to support. So we don't need to download every single thing on here. If we just download this Gigabyte App Center. So we don't need WinZip or WinRAR these days. Windows has built-in software for that, which is good. So no more WinRAR making you feel guilty these days. That's how our Windows updates go on. So we'll enable momentum caching. Yep, let's just do it now. And we'll get all those updates applied. Might take a little bit to reboot here because it's just going to finish up the downloading and installing those updates. Ah, yeah, Nick, we must have overlooked GeForce Experience when we just reinstalled Windows on your PC. That's okay. It would have prompted you to download it probably at some stage. I don't usually use the optimized settings through GeForce Experience anyway. I go in and manually tune them. Because like there's certain things that I always turn off. Like I always turn motion blur off and stuff. Like I don't care about things like that. So I got my own sort of way I like to configure them. And plus every game can have different settings and stuff like that. So I like to familiarise myself with different settings in different games. So alrighty. Back into Windows. So we'll go into Gigabyte App Center and we'll make sure we've got all of the latest motherboard and chipset drivers. We'll also go back into Windows Update and we'll get any cumulative updates. Yeah, there's a couple of them there, which it's already getting. It's good. So we won't worry about all this other software. Already got CPU Z, already got Chrome, XSplit comes with it. I'll install it, and if they don't want it, they can uninstall it. Alrighty, so Windows is finishing up. Let's put some custom icons down. What? And don't mind the resolution on the screen. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing, and it's got everything to do with the TV that it's running on. So about the only other thing that Matt might consider doing to this PC is we could add another Thermaltake 140mm RGB fan around the back there. On the back then you'd have another RGB fan there. We could also get some RGB strips to get a bit more light in the case, just if Matt wants a brighter look inside the case. They're not essential. I mean, this setup to me is just fine. I think, honestly, sometimes the RGB can get a bit much. I know some people definitely feel that way. But obviously, I mean, now's the right time to do it. So, alright, Alright, so while that's finishing up, let's have a quick go at this Crystal Disk Mark. Did that not install? Well, we want Crystal Disk Marks, we want to see how our SSD's going. Alright, let's test our SSD, see how fast it's going. .6 GB a second, not too shabby. It would actually get a bit faster than that. It's just that the drive's obviously in use doing some other things. Yeah, that second one there. That's normally what we'd see for the top two, around the 7 GB a second. That's with the momentum caching enabled. We have an issue installing the BIOS updater. I see this a lot on with this app, but it's going to fail again. Yep. Alright, so we'll have a quick look at our Wi-Fi speeds. This is our Wi-Fi speed. So no issues here. Get faster speeds if it wasn't not. So fast Wi-Fi, fast SSD. All that's really left to have a look at is our graphics, or a better download. There's one app I use to do my my stress tests on computers. It's called R23. No, it's called Cinebench. The version's called R23. You can just search for it here in the Microsoft Store, and you don't have to type in Cinebench. You can just type R23 and it'll come up. No, I don't want to sign in. No. Yeah, Nick made a comment about Gigabyte software. Like, they're pretty good, and they make good products. Generally, pretty good at supporting users with warranty and other issues. But yeah, their RGB fusion sucks, and yeah, some of their stuff's not as refined. But you find this problem with all the manufacturers. Yeah. Patrick brought up a good one there about how to wire up cables and stuff. You have more amperage available across those two cables. So even though one PCIe cable will have the two plugs on it, you are better using two cables if you've got them. Okay, so that's for our stress test. We'll do that later. Let's run a quick Cinebench R20 run. Ultra, extreme tessellation, 8x anti-aliasing. It's going to run at 1080p. Let's do this.
Smash it.
Actually, let's not do this. Let's no. We will. Really? I know. Didn't like me getting out of it at that point. No, so what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to configure Reaver Tuner so I can get some stats up on the screen. And while we do that, we will configure the graphics card's fans. Just do not like that curve like that. That's a better curve. Apply its startup. Save profile to number 1. And we go to our monitoring. Yes. 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 Speed, temp limit, no. CPU temperature. CPU usage. CPU clock. CPU power. RAM usage. Apply. On screen display. 7 F8 F9. Apply. It's bigger. Show statistics. Yep. Cool. Alright. Saved everything? Yep. Let me try to fix that because you can't see the frames per second. It looks like it's running at 35 frames a second and it's like 100 and... See it clearly now. So we can see our CPU is not really doing much work in this game, this benchmark. Yeah.
Patrick says this was my first build. Have more questions on fan speeds and curves. Maybe in future we can take this as a subject of discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm looking for any suggestions on content to make. I'm willing to make the content. I just need the suggestions, basically. I'm just closing up this side panel on it because I need to have this closed while I'm doing tests. But I mean, I'm not seeing any evidence that we're going to have any temperature problems here with this setup. It's all looking very good. I'm going to move the microphone over this side so I'm a bit louder. It's having no worries running this simulation on the highest settings at 140 frames a second plus. Yeah, Patrick, definitely I can do a video on fan speed curves and stuff. It's really easy to program. The thing is, by default, most graphics cards will have a fan curve that's kind of tuned for quietness, because the manufacturers don't want people to be like, oh, the card's very noisy, isn't it? They don't want people seeing that. And they figure that if you care about temperatures, you're going to go in and tune the settings anyway. Which is kind of painful because it means that I've got to manually adjust fan curves for pretty much every graphics card I install. Okay, so we'll have a look at that. Had a look at our hard drive. We had a look at that. We'll run. Do a quick superposition benchmark run. Let's do a 4K. Yeah, let's run a 4K benchmark here. So we're only on a 1080 screen, but let's run a 4K benchmark and let's see how the 3070 holds up. No worries keeping up here at 4K.
Oh, this bench.
superposition. So it's been running between 73 and 103 frames a second here at 4K. There we go, 4K optimized, a score of 11,237. So run this benchmark at home and see how you compare to the 3070 with the 3600 as a CPU. Alrighty, so we are on to the final phase of this computer setup, which is the stress test. So before I do anything, I do a little quick stress test. And I'm just watching those temperatures. No obvious issues there. So what I'm doing here by running this one quickly, if there's something wrong with our cooler, either the pump on the radiator block is faulty, or we don't have a good mount on the cooler, or something's not right, then after a couple of minutes of running this, these temperatures here should be dangerously high, getting up to the T-junction, which for Ryzen is 95 degrees. And so we're not seeing that there. We're seeing it sort of looks like it's going to settle in the low 70s there on this test. So that's good. We've seen a little bit of preliminary stuff for our graphics card. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a proper torture test. So this is a 30-minute test stability here. This gets run 3 times, and while we're running this, we're also running this application to test our graphics card. And we're going to run this on the CPU. And so what this is doing, this is running very, very intensive types of instruction sets on the CPU. You're seeing it put together this picture, but it's Guantanamo Bay down there inside the CPU while it's doing this work. It's not just simply rendering a picture, it's doing it about the most intensive way you can possibly do it. And so by running this, while we're running this, we're doing the equivalent of rendering a video while we're running a game. So not a very realistic workload, but it's a great way for me to test the thermals of this case and make sure that all of our components are running fine. And so that's pretty much it. My job's over now. Now I sit here and we wait for this to run. And we make sure we keep an eye on our temperatures while it's running to make sure that there's no problems. And so Cinebench will just run there in the background. It's just going to keep rendering that picture over and over and over again for half an hour, and then I start it again and we keep going. And we do this with the case all closed up because we don't want an open case. We want to make this as hard for the computer to pass as possible. And if there's other weird problems with the computer, doing this intensive work now will expose those problems, and then the customer won't have, there's less chance of the customer having weird problems down the track if you do these sort of tests. Not everyone does. Some people just build a computer and give it to the customer, but that's not best practice. You need to do these sorts of tests. I built hundreds of computers, and yeah, basically I've always done these kinds of tests because I don't trust myself. I need to see these numbers for myself to make sure I have done everything right. And so the good thing about these tests is in terms of thermals, you get a pretty good idea of where it's sitting fairly early in the piece. These graphics cards are jumping around a bit in. It's not intensive enough for this graphics card. Better. Do some work. So look, I might leave it here because that's pretty much covered everything. Everything's all installed and ready to go. We didn't have any other hard drives to install or anything else to set up like that. The only other things that I have to do are little things like change the power and sleep settings and just make sure that everything else is configured right in the background. But other than that, this PC will be ready for Matt to collect from tomorrow onwards. So happy days for Matt. Nice, straightforward, smooth build. We didn't have any problems. We've had a couple of weird issues the last couple of weeks with builds. I've had a couple of dead on arrival parts, which is really weird. You don't see too much of that. It does happen, but it's very weird to get two things like very close together. So as you can see, we've made the graphics card work a bit harder. CPU temperature's gone up a couple of degrees there under load, so it's at 75 degrees now, which is still 20 degrees under limit, so that's very, very, very much in the green zone there. Now graphics card, you probably can't see the graph too well on the bottom there, but it's starting to settle into about 64 degrees. So I think we'll leave it here for tonight because, like I said, I'm just going to be running these benchmarks here on the computer, doing this stress test on it for the next hour or so. Make sure it's all stable for the customer. So that will pretty much be it. So I'll see everyone else in the next video. Don't know when that is because, like I said, I've got a lot of stuff I'm setting up at the moment and all that. So if I don't get around to doing a video tomorrow, we'll have another video again on Thursday. So have a good one, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video.